Hey folks, Darren here, Mr. Sandsman. Welcome back to the channel. I was never a fan of westerns when I was a kid. I grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, and you know, my grandparents always had them on the TV whenever I went to their house, and Bonanza was always on, and I was never really a massive fan of cowboy movies, as we used to call them. Until that was around about the early 90s. I would have been about 18 or 19, and I watched on the BBC the Dollars Trilogy. They had them on successive nights, I think, like on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I watched all three of them. And I have to say, I was blown away by them back then. I've never really owned them at all. I never really had any VHSs, DVDs, or Blu-rays in the past. And when Arrow announced that they were going to release the Dollars Trilogy, I thought, you know what? I think now's the time for me to go back into these films and really appreciate them again for the masterpieces that they all are. And it's true, whenever you watch any of these movies, the three of them, A Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, or The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, you can see how modern day filmmakers have taken so much inspiration from Sergio Leone's direction in these movies and what he did for spaghetti westerns. And so about a week ago, I received A Fistful of Dollars from Arrow, and I watched it and was just blown away by the work that Arrow have done on this 4K restoration. Like I said, these have been released before on different boutique labels, so I can't speak to the quality of those or whether there's much difference between them. All I can do is tell you about the Arrow version and how amazing they look and sound, and they do. You know, there's a lot of close-ups in this film. Sergio Leone was great at those kind of crash zooms, those close-ups on people's faces, and so much so that you can see the pores on the likes of Clint Eastwood or Jean-Marie Volonté's face. You can see the dirt and the grime on their faces in such close-up and minute detail. It really does look fantastic, and that's, you know, the beauty of doing 4K restorations from the original 2perf negatives that they had. So this is the first one, A Fistful of Dollars, a really cool box set that they've put together here. Let me just show you the spine and the cover close up in more detail, and then there's the back. Inside we get this awesome slipcase that everything sits in. You get a choice of artwork with this, which I presume is I think that's the newly commissioned stuff there, and then the original artwork. You also get a poster which has the same artwork again, reversible, looking really cool. And then a really nice thick book that comes along with it, telling you all about the movie, the restoration, and with all sorts of pictures and essays from various know-it-alls across the industry. There you go. Artwork and reverse there. So what's on this first entry in the Dollars Trilogy? So a 4K restoration from the original camera negative. It's in Dolby Vision and HDR10, aspect ratio of 2:3:5:1. You get the English mono and 5.1 DTS master audio. You also get this in Italian as well, with English subtitles. An audio commentary by film historian Christopher Frayling, new interviews with cast and crew, archival featurettes and documentaries, reversible sleeve featuring original and newly commissioned artwork, which I just showed you, a collector's booklet with essays and production stills. This movie was released back in 1964 and grossed approximately 14.5 million at the worldwide box office. The critics' score is 98% and the audience score is 91%. So, you know, a fairly solid movie. I love the story to this. I love Clint Eastwood's presence in this film. I like the fact that as they went on to make more movies, they used some of the same actors in subsequent films. Jean-Marie Volonté is the villain in both this film and for A Few Dollars More as well. But it's Clint Eastwood who really steals the show with his kind of steely look as he rides into town. I love the moment when he's on the horse and the blind guy on the mule goes past, and as he passes, he's got a sign on his back that Clint Eastwood just kind of slowly doffs his hat to him as he rides off. But Yeah, I mean, the one thing about this film is that how cool Clint Eastwood looks, and you can certainly see where John Carpenter got a lot of his influence for movies like Escape from New York. You know, Kurt Russell is essentially playing the man with no name in Escape from New York. The similarities are uncanny throughout the film, and also to the extent that in Escape from New York, Carpenter brought in Lee Van Cleef, who's one of the main heroes from A Few Dollars More. So there's clear influences in that film. And also with Quentin Tarantino as well, you can tell how much this movie influenced movies like Django and The Hateful Eight. There's so much that Tarantino has taken from these movies and adapted into his own catalogue, including camera shots, scores, different compositions, things like that. It's amazing how much directors borrow from classics like this. Story-wise in this film, I think I prefer the story for A Few Dollars More. This one's more of Clint Eastwood going into a town, trying to clean it up. There are two warring families there, and he plays them off against each other in order to clean up the town and go on his merry way. But as I said, I prefer the story for A Few Dollars More, whereas he teams up with bounty hunter, played by Lee Van Cleef, known as the Man in Black, or Colonel Douglas Mortimer as we know him, who's got this kind of secret vendetta. As I said, he teams up with Clint Eastwood, who's called Manco. They team up together to take down a villain called El Indio, who's about to rob a bank. I always think that this story has a lot more to it than the original film. Now, don't get me wrong, Fistful of Dollars is fantastic, but for A Few Dollars More, has more depth to it. The characterization is better. You feel you know a little bit more about Clint Eastwood's character, and the addition of Lee Van Cleef really is a welcome addition to this trilogy. So this came out on Monday. I watched it on Sunday. I got it early, which was nice. The postman dropped it through the letterbox before the weekend, as is what happens with a lot of Arrow and Second Sight releases if you order them direct from their sites. So I had a great time watching this yesterday. It's a good half an hour longer than A Fistful of Dollars, and I think The Good, the Bad, the Ugly is even longer than this film. Critics scored it 92% on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score was 94%, and this movie made approximately $25 million at the worldwide box office way back in 1965. So a great result if you were to look at that and adjust it for inflation. So again, pretty much the same specs as with A Fistful of Dollars: Dolby Vision HDR10, 4K restoration from the original camera negative, audio commentary by film historian Christopher Frayling, new interviews with cast and crew, archival featurettes and documentaries. There's a wealth of stuff on here for you to get your teeth into. Reversible sleeve featuring original and newly commissioned artwork, collector's booklet with essays and production skills. I'll just open this up so you can see. You get this great slip cover here, and I'll pop all the gubbins out. There you have the 4K Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray that's on there just contains all the extras that are with the film. Inside, you get the two discs. There's the extras disc, and that is the 4K version. Another thick book again with all sorts of production stills and essays, which I am actually going to have a look at. It's that there, beautiful artwork and beautiful back to it as well, with the original font and all the taglines and credits. And then, as with the last one, you get the poster, which is reversible with the original artwork on it as well. Very cool. I was going to do all three at once, but unfortunately The Good, the Bad and the Ugly's been delayed, so I'm going to have to wait a little while for that. But I thought I'll get these two out now for you guys to take a look at, and I can definitely, as always, highly recommend these. You may want to hold on to your original releases. I've not had any other releases of this film to compare them to, but certainly I'm very happy with the way that these two look. I think if I were to say which one is the better of the two, I think in terms of the way that they look, I would say the restoration is slightly better on A Fistful of Dollars, I think. There are some sequences at the start of A Few Dollars More, whereas you get a lot of negative scratches on the screen, particularly in the opening sequence, and there's a lot of really soft focus shots in for A Few Dollars More. But when it does crash in on people's faces, you can see the detail. But I think A Fistful of Dollars is probably the more impressive of the two 4K restorations. Don't get me wrong, they both look superb, but there were a few moments in For a Few Dollars More where I thought it's a shame that that couldn't look a tiny little bit better. So that's it, folks. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. If you haven't done so already, then maybe consider it. I'm going to carry on talking about Clint Eastwood. I'm going to do another video next about Dirty Harry, so stick around for that one. That'll be out pretty soon. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for all the support. Cheers.